It's pretty light.
You know, it actually welds. It actually welds.
Really?
So we got the Camaro moved over to the shop here. We got the Racecraft subframe in it. Man, oh man, I am 100% impressed with the Racecraft. You can see the old jalopy here, the original second gen Camaro subframe. So it's pretty much all original. The control arms are powder coated and it's got some aftermarket bushings in it. These are the subframe connectors. I cut them off just because they're welded on here on both sides. So I just lopped them, just make it easier to get it out of the car. So now that we got the car moved over and the subframe put in it, now we're gonna work on the cage. We had to wait until we got the subframe in it to get started. Smith Racecraft offers these bars for the subframe. I don't know how he attaches them in the front, but they bolt to the firewall. I opted not to get that because I wanted to do it this way. I wanted to tie it into the car and go all the way through and tie it into the cage inside. This technically doesn't have anything to do with the cage and getting it certified for safety. This is more just for a chassis and the car performing like it's supposed to. I added these. I don't think I needed these at all. Normally people don't put these braces in here. I didn't think it was gonna hurt and it didn't really add any weight to it. And you could tell before we added this, just the subframe in here, if you were to push on the front of this thing or pick up on it, it would flex the subframe, and even Racecraft said that you have to add either this or his bars. Now I've been working, cleaning it up because it's been sitting and it's getting rusty, so I've been stripping it down and sanding it. But the cage is coming along very nicely. I'm very happy with the way it's turning out. Talk about no stress. So the first time I've ever built a cage ever. I'm doing it at a chromoly and I have to get it certified and there's a time crunch and I'm like, the clock's on fire right now. I'm trying to get the front end finished up because in about a week I'm going to pick up the engine. I want to have the tranny in it before I get the engine. I'm taking the motor plate with me when I go get the engine, so when I come back I'm hoping to take it out of the back of the truck, put it right in there. I'm using the same headers. I don't have time. I want to build new headers. I don't have time to deal with the headers. So same headers, but I won't have any problem header room or oil pan. And I think the oil pan that I got for the engine, I bought for that subframe. So being that I'm not a chassis guy, I kind of have my own opinion on how the cage should be done, but I studied other people's cars. What sealed the deal on this particular style and height and where it's at is I went up to work on my engine up at Craig's and he's got a Nova. I can't remember the guy that did the work on the car. Very nice cage on the car. And he has the same subframe. Obviously it's for a Nova instead of the second gen, but the same Racecraft. And his bars were up high like this. They came through and they came all the way to the front like this, because I debated actually moving this back and having it more line up with this bar. But then I felt like this little bit, which the front of the car on the second gen is pretty heavy, the whole nose of it. So I wanted to get up here to give it just more strength to support the front of the car. For one, the higher this is, the more stability it's gonna give the car. You get this lower, and like if I were trying to tie it into the dash bar down underneath the dash, it's not going to be as rigid for a twisting motion. Obviously up taller is going to give it more strength. So this is pretty much where they went through on Craig's car, and then they went above the cowling here, the firewall on both sides they came through. So I thought that worked out great in here and after looking at it. So that's why I tied it in like I did. The only problem that I ran into is the driver's side bar wound up hitting the linkage for the driver's side wiper blade. The motor comes over and runs to the passenger side, and then there's an arm that comes over to the driver's side. So I have no issue over the passenger. I'm hoping after I get this said and done, I can maybe modify the arm that comes over to the driver's side, because I do want to have wipers on this thing, or an aftermarket, some sort of different configuration. Or I could be like total import and just have the one wiper blade and have it like halfway up the windshield or something.
He said we were mediocre.
That's it. He made us feel special.
I'm going to bring a squeegee with me and just stick my arm out the window and squeegee it if I have a problem in the rain, because there's a possibility going through Oregon and that we could hit rain. But I'm gonna rain X quadruple rain X the windshield. Any water just gonna fly off like it was exploding. So you see this welded on the outside of the firewall here, and then on here I'm gonna weld it on the inside of the car. So it'll be welded on both sides, so it's a lot stronger, tied into the car. So then it comes all the way through, and I added this bar. This would be the dash bar, I guess you would call it, just a little bit higher. Normally, people put it under the dash. This is all gonna be behind the dash. I'm gonna put the dash back in here and cover all this up. So I put the dash bar where it comes down, where the A-pillars come down, so it's connected to this is a beefier part of the sheet metal. When I cut the holes with the hole saw, I was more focused on the outside where you can see, obviously. This is all gonna be covered up. So I kind of had to guess. When I did the hole saw, it wound up being a little bit off. So I had to kind of open it up a little bit with the high speed bit. So it's kind of massaged it to get a little more room, and then it wound up having a little more of a gap. So I took the driver's door off for a couple reasons. For one, my dad tried to do door bushings in it with the door on the car, and it's never been right, and it's always hit and closed stupid. So I bought new hinges and to get it out of the way, because it is a very big opening with no door on there. And we had to take the interior out in order to get in there and weld and not melt everything, and add the subframe connectors. And these are the Detroit Speed, and they're actually the right size so they can actually pass tech. This one didn't turn out so good. I followed the instructions and everything, and the hole wound up being too big. And then the passenger one, I didn't use a template, didn't measure nothing, and it turned out trick. And then I got the plates on here for this is where the main hoop's gonna go. I still want to put the side panels, the plastic panels in here, cover up all the ugliness. I want the thing to look like complete of a car as possible, which I don't think it'll affect too much because the doors are so long on this thing that the door bar, by the time you get to the point where you're going to get in and out of the car, it's going to be so low that I don't even think it's going to affect. You probably won't even notice. Back seat's going to be a little hard to get into, but nobody ever rides with them anyway, so it doesn't matter. Okay. The dash is all original and had a rough life. So when I took it apart, the glove box didn't make the party. And this car had a whole bunch of this sound deadening and stuff in here I'm pulling out. For one, obviously for weight, but for two, if it ever catches on fire, I don't want any of this fabric-y, tarry stuff to enhance a fire or to, get it to spread or anything crazy. So that's why I'm trying to scrape off all this. But this is an AC car, so it has this bigger hole in the firewall. I added this plate. I normally put a patch panel in here. I butt it up so I can grind the weld and it blends right in. But this firewall was so thin and cheesy. If I tried to butt it and weld it, it would just blow holes through the firewall. So I decided to put this plate on the backside, push it up tight, just to give it some more reinforcement, to stiffen it up, because this was so flimsy and it's so wavy. Any little heat, it just bows it, like up here, going around the bar. So this is the hoop. This is the first thing that we bent and the first piece that we bent, and it turned out good. It turned out like spot on right out of the gate. I think this bend right here though, we're gonna do a little bit tighter just to kick that bottom in a little bit more to fit on the floor, but other than that, it's almost there. So we're really happy with the way this turned out. First go around, I'm really excited about it. Not only does it have to get certified, it's my first cage, but it's chrome moly, so yeah, we're TIG welding the whole thing. And I'm a little rusty on the TIG welding, so it's kind of frustrating because I want it to be a certain way in my head, and then trying to execute that, it's kind of stressful sometimes because it just doesn't quite turn out the way I want it to turn out, but it's coming along, it's doing good. That's why I kind of started here, because this part of it doesn't affect the certification part. So I'm kind of practicing on the welds out here before I go in there. So I'm gonna be hopefully a pro at TIGging this by the time I get to the inside of the car, especially the ones over here that you see through the window. Those are the ones that are really gonna stress me out. People walk up and look like a bird landing on your cage or something. I don't want to have that, but yeah, this is really light. So to give you a little idea, I mean, I have a door off and interior out of it, and but I mean, it does have the glass in it and everything. But you see how it's pretty light. I'm curious to see if I could do that with the whole front suspension and sitting on the ground. It's not bad for a little street car. So I got the rear end put back in the car in order to move it over here. One of the things I was worried about was the wheel tubs. I was debating whether to do the Detroit Speed mini tubs because I went with the 10-inch wheel. So that's one of the reasons why on the rear end, why we added, we got the Funkhauser shock relocator. So it moves the shocks inboard and then it adds anti-roll at the same time. So I did that because before the shocks were on the outside of the leaf spring, and that was the first thing that the tires were gonna hit. So I moved that inboard. The next thing was gonna be the wheel tub. There is a spot, because this car has had a lot of different configurations. I think at some point my dad or something, maybe me, I can't remember. On the bottom where the wheel well comes down, there's normally a lip that comes in. That lip has been beat over. I think that's the spot where it would have hit if it was all original stock. But being that that was already moved in, and then now I moved the shocks inboard, I didn't have a problem with this. My wheels fits the car like it was made for it. And I was really worried about the wider wheel, but the wheel you don't really even notice. Turned out good. I'm glad I did. I got good old Craig at Race Engine Systems talked me into it. I was gonna go with an 8, and he said it was crazy if I went with an 8. That you have to do a 10. And he was right. Hands down. Hats off. Hats off to Craig. Anyways.
Your hat's been off this whole video.
Yeah, fair enough. So here is my drive tire. I have off because I was checking the drag tire. These wheels are a little weathered, need to be polished up, so I just have a 275/60 15 and just a normal BF GTA radial. This was the wheels that I used to race on. This was a non-beadlock, non-screwed. I went to a beadlock because of you have problems. For one, I don't want to put screws in these wheels. I think it looks stupid. And for two, if you have one tire spins, you can have it spin on the bead. It won't go flat or anything crazy. But when you launch, the wheel can actually spin in the bead. That's why you beadlock it or screw it. But if you have, say this one is on the passenger side and it only moves an inch, and then the one on the driver's side, that it moves 3 inches, well, now your car's driving, it's going to make it drive crooked. It's going to turn in a sense because one tire is grabbing more than the other. That's why I went to the beadlock. And then if you're going to get a beadlock, might as well get a double beadlock and be done with it. I'm planning for everything I can to handle Craig. Craig says he put all the salt in this engine. It's got all the spice, all the salt. So even if you don't like the second gen Camaros, you got to like, share, subscribe. You got to follow along on this thing, man. This is the first ever Redwood Rally drag and drive.
Not just Redwood Rally, this is the first drag and drive period.
On the West Coast. We got like 80 hours worth of work and it's like hardly anything to show you. And at this point it's Redwood Rally or bust. Like, man, it's gonna be close, but we're trying to make it for sure. We're gonna be there. Guys, see the same when we get the engine in it. Off the hook. See you next time.